Hello, and welcome to Dynamics 365 Project Operations for Project and Resource Managers. Hosting today's training are Green Data Ventures and TexasPGB, two leading Microsoft partners who are working together to share the benefits of Microsoft's newest addition to the Dynamics 365 platform. I'm John Michael Scott, and I'll be one of your presenters today. I head up the team at Green Data, providing solution architecture, human-centric design, and more. As we move through the presentation today, you'll also hear from Patrick Bourne, who leads the team at TexasPGB as a principal consultant. Our collective experiences total over 35 years of solving high-impact project management, operations, and IT transformation-related business problems for Fortune 500 companies. We're both really excited to share this training with you today, and as we present, we welcome questions. Using the question feature, submit your questions and we'll take a few minutes at the end of our session to address as many as we can. If we don't get to yours, we'll still be able to see it and we'll be sure to reach out directly after the webinar to address it with you. Microsoft has been consistently enhancing and improving the Dynamics 365 platform for more than a decade. With the addition of Project Operations, we've seen another major leap in capability. Project Operations has unified the aspects that we know and love about Dynamics already, such as CRM capabilities for contacts, accounts, leads, and opportunities, with the Microsoft Project toolset, specifically Project for the Web. Combining these tools into a seamless platform has created more value than just the sum of the parts. Today, we're focused on connected project and resource management, and I imagine that may mean something a little bit different to everyone. So, Patrick, what are we going to focus on as we train today?
Thanks for the introduction, John Michael. Today is all about connected project and resource management. When we talk about connected project and resource management, what we're really getting at is the idea that there's important information from across your company that plays a role in running projects. All too often, we find project management offices that live in their own bubble without taking into account the other activities around the organization. That could mean they don't take into account the day-to-day jobs of subject matter experts. It could mean that they aren't set up to understand the potential needs that are forthcoming from their sales process, or even that they aren't able to easily produce transparent and automated reporting about the statuses of projects for stakeholders at all levels of the company. To overcome these challenges, we're able to use Dynamics 365 Project Operations as a fully connected solution, from prospect all the way through profit. With your entire team reading from the same sheet of music, there's no doubt the increased efficiency will be uncovered. Of course, to get started doing any project management, we need a blank project. And John Michael, I think you've got one ready for us that we can start building out. Walk us through how to begin.
Okay, on my screen, you'll see the project section of Project Operations. Let's talk a bit about navigation. First of all, we have navigation on the left-hand side. You can see that that's broken into a home area, an area called My Work, and an area called Projects. And then also at the very bottom of the screen, you're going to notice that there's a pop-up that allows us to change areas. For our purposes today, I'm just going to stay within the projects area, and we're just going to use navigation. You see it already present on the screen. What about the rest of the screen? Well, in the white area, or the body section, we see that there's a top nav bar. That top nav bar has to do with the objects that you see on the screen. So for instance, we have a list of my active projects. We have the ability to create additional projects, delete some of the ones that are there. We can email links, and there are other options. I'm going to go ahead and jump down into one of these projects so that we can start looking at how to set it up. So we have a project called Contoso New Soft Release 1. You'll notice that the top navigation bar has actually changed, but the left-hand navigation bar stays the same. So this is a reflection of Microsoft's use of context-specific navigation bars. Okay. Right below the context-specific navigation bar, we have the name of this particular project I've selected. And to the right, we have some key statistics like when it's due by, what the estimated labor cost is going to be, cost consumption, and progress. Immediately below that is the life cycle that we have put into place for this particular project. We go through a process of identifying new opportunities, quoting them. Once we're done with quoting, we move into planning the project. We go into delivery of the project, completion of the project, and finally close out. After the project stages, below that, you'll see that we have navigation points within the project. So within Contoso New Soft Release 1, we see that there's a summary page, an issues page, risk page, task team, resource assignments, resource reconciliation, and so on across the screen. There's also something that says related off to the far right, and related shows some other common areas that you may be interested in diving into. Within our summary screen, we have kind of what you would call maybe like the business case for the project or the charter for the project charter rather. And usually this is going to contain some core metadata or information about the project. You're going to use that kind of data to do project status reports, portfolio reports, all the kinds of rolled up reports that leadership and management are looking for. Okay, let's dive into building out our work breakdown structure. And I've pre-populated some of that work breakdown structure for us beforehand. So we've again seen that we're going into a slightly different experience. We see that we have a grid view, a board view, and a timeline view. I'm going to start out in the grid view, and we're just going to take a look at the work breakdown structure that we've created here. So again, this is for a new software application. We're going to build out release 1. And so we have a set of different phases. We have the analysis phase, the design phase, the build phase, the test phase, and finally, we're going to deliver the product. The analysis, you'd see some pretty common tasks that you would conduct during an analysis phase. But at the end of the day, we should look at this as more of a template. So as a template, we can add new things. We can take away things that we don't plan on doing, like maybe financial feasibility isn't a thing that we need to worry about, or maybe we recognize that this is something new and that there's not necessarily an existing market for it. So we could actually knock that loose by clicking on our vertical ellipsis and deleting or cutting out that task. This would cause some impacts to things like our dependencies and to the total effort and duration of the project. But stepping aside from those things, we can certainly delete tasks easily. We just click on the vertical ellipsis, select delete task, and at that point, it will be removed from this work breakdown structure. You can also see that the ellipsis shows us kind of our right-click menu, our pop-up menu. Here we can do things like create additional subtasks, promote this from being a subtask into a higher level task, insert new tasks above or below. But I find that if you're actually going to do a lot of insertions at once, like let's say we decide that we're going to detail out market analysis in greater detail, well, I would most likely do that by creating a series of tasks at the bottom. So first I would do some initial market review, and then I might analyze competitors, and then I might do an initial total addressable market assessment. And I would grab those 3 tasks by highlighting them, and I would literally drag them up underneath market analysis. And once I do that, I can make them subtasks and further detail out my schedule. For our example here, I'm going to just leave the schedule as it is. So I got rid of the 3 tasks that I wanted to delete. As you notice, you can delete more than one task at a time, so you don't have to just click on delete for every single task and work your way through it. You can actually grab whole sets and update your initial starting work breakdown structure. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about what else we see on our screen here. We have obviously the names of our tasks and the phases that they're wrapped within, but we also have duration, effort, depends on, start and finish. Well, first of all, what's the difference between duration and effort for those of you who are newer to project management? Duration is calendar time that passes during which the task is going to be conducted. Effort, on the other hand, is the number of hours during that calendar time that we're going to actually spend to get the task done. So technically, duration of 3 days, you're thinking, oh, I've got 24 hours to get things done. Well, our estimate actually says for this first task that we're going to spend a maximum of 16 hours to do the work. Cool. Depends on is really trying to identify which tasks are related to which other tasks. Start and finish are pretty straightforward. You get the basic idea. Start and finish is going to be calculated on the basis of duration. And you may wonder about the overall start of the project. Well, the overall start of the project was identified in the project charter or in the summary information that we had in our previous screen. Okay, so how easy is it to update the duration? Well, we're going to throw in durations for a few tasks that we don't currently have fleshed out. For our hi-fi mockups, I'm expecting that to take about 18 days of duration. For our build sprint, that's going to be 10 days for each of our build sprints. And for our test sprints, we're only going to take 5 days for testing in each of those sprints. And that pretty much knocks out our durations. Well, what about the amount of actual effort that we're going to spend on these hi-fi mockups? Okay, 18 days. I think probably we're going to be able to get this done in about 40 to 50 hours. So I'll go ahead and specify that there. We'll move down to our build sprint, and this is going to be a standard 80-hour sprint. And we're going to move down to our test sprints, and those are going to be standard as well. Finally, let's go ahead and figure out what tasks are related to what other tasks. As you notice, I've done a bunch of that here. However, we're going to take a look at some of the other user experiences that we could use to define our project. So I'm going to switch in this case to the timeline. In the timeline, right now I'm zoomed all the way in so I can see very detailed information about all the tasks. As you notice, as I move my mouse over the timeline, the collector at the top showing, what the total duration of the project is and what the duration of specific tasks are. You can see that popping up at the top of the screen. You can also see a few other things like weekends are skipped over. That's why we see gray here. And we can see all the tasks that are so far connected to each other. We can also actually drag and drop. So we can actually drag the start of the task to be longer or tap in earlier. We can drag the end of the task to make the task longer. And at the far right or far left of the task, we actually see that there are connectors, sort of like what you may be used to from Visio to be able to connect different things together. Okay, we're going to zoom out so I can see the whole project. And I'm going to make some connections between the hi-fi and the lo-fi mockups. So I'll go to the end of the lo-fi mockup and connect that to the beginning of the hi-fi mockup. I'm also going to connect the hi-fi mockups to the build sprints. I'm not going to start any build sprints until I've got those mockups done. And I'm going to connect the first and second build sprints together. Cool. I also notice that I have nothing connecting the test sprint that goes with build sprint 1. So let's make a connection there. Awesome. And another connection for test sprint 2. And last but not least, we're not going to finish and move into the beta release test until we have also finished all of our other test sprints. So I'll go ahead and make some connections to there so that we know that all of our dependencies are met. Now, of course, the dependency for the first test sprint is pretty far back in time, so we probably don't have to worry about it, but things could happen, things could shift. We could have some changes that occur to our schedule. At the end of the day, though, all of our schedule is now connected up, and any place where we do have dependencies, those dependencies are accounted for. Awesome. So that's pretty good. We're all set there. We can also go to specific dates in order to, focus on a particular part of the project. So let's say we go to the 9th. You see the shifted the date, so we are seeing that particular date, and we can see what tasks are happening from that date forward. Okay, cool. We can also collapse things in order to just concentrate on the higher level concepts. And I'll go ahead and change the zoom so you can see how that all comes together. And of course, we can expand any one area in order to get more of the detail. What about board? Okay, board is basically your standard Kanban board. And what I've done here is I'm going to take a look at progress just to see what things are active, not started, completed. So this way, the people who are going to later be assigned to individual tasks, they can actually address these tasks, and we can identify which of them are already in progress, or um, keep track as they reach completion. Okay, what we haven't done here is we haven't spent any time on assignments, and that's okay. So now that we've made some connections between these tasks, we've got some effort, we've got some duration, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to consider some staffing.
All right, I've got our Contoso RADApp 7 release project pulled up here, and just to get us oriented, we're starting with an excellent schedule. We'll take a look at that on our Tasks tab. And the main thing on our mind is how we get started and how we get this work done. Depending on where you are in the process, that usually would include assigning what we call generic resources. A generic resource is a placeholder that we use during planning that will ultimately be replaced by a named individual when it comes time to deliver the project. To get started with the process of assigning generic resources to tasks, we first need to create the generic resource. Now, our scheduling team has been hard at work, and they've given us a column that tells us if tasks are ready to staff. We'll start by putting generic resources on those tasks that have been marked ready to staff. To do that, under the Assigned To column, we're going to scroll down and find the plus sign, then select the ellipsis and say Add Generic Resource. When that comes up, we're going to go ahead and fill in a position name. For our hi-fi mockups, we want to have a UI UX designer creating those. So that's what we'll list as our position name. When it comes to bill rates, our UI UX designer position is filled by someone who has an internal role of an operations analyst. So for role, we'll select Operations Analyst. Roles are what Dynamics uses to determine cost rates and bill rates, so it's critical we get this part right. Once we're done, we'll click Save and Close at the bottom. You'll notice our UI UX designer is now listed in the Assigned To field. We'll go ahead and repeat the process for our next tasks, Conduct Build Sprint 1 and Conduct Build Sprint 2. Again, clicking the plus sign, the ellipsis, and adding a generic resource. For Conduct Build Sprint 1, we want to assign a senior developer, so that'll be our position name. The role, though, will be a software engineer. I'll select that now. Again, when you're ready, click Save and Close. You'll notice our senior developer has been assigned to Conduct Build Sprint 1. For Conduct Build Sprint 2, we'll reuse our senior developer. There's no need to set it up again. Just once per project. Once your project is ready for execution, it's time to replace our generic resources with named individuals from our team. To do this, we need to navigate to the Team section of our project by clicking on the navigation bar across the top. To start the process of converting generic resources, we'll select the row and click Generate Requirement. I'll do that now for our software engineer. We'll get a confirmation that the resource requirement has been generated, and you'll notice our required hours are now filled in. We'll do the same thing for our UI UX designer. Once we've generated the requirement, it's now time to actually match our bookable resources into those positions. I'll start with our software engineer and click Book. Clicking Book opened up a new window which displays the schedule board. If you've used other Dynamics products in the past, you may be familiar with the schedule board. If not, we'll walk through it briefly. Down the left-hand side, we have the filter pane, which narrows down the resources that appear in the results on the right. In our test company, we have many organizational units, but fortunately, I have the power to staff from resources across any of them. So I'll go ahead and remove the organizational unit filter. In the results section, across the top, we see the weeks of the year and the amount of effort that is needed for each week, based on the role that we've selected. For each resource, you'll notice that we see the number of hours of availability they have for any given week. We'll go ahead and select Carlos and select each week. You'll notice Carlos has a green check mark. This indicates he's available for the full effort across that duration. Once we've selected a given week, our Create Booking pane appears on the right. This is where we can select things like our booking status, our booking method, the duration, and even if we want to double book this resource. Let's go ahead and click Book and Exit. We'll get the confirmation that our hours were booked successfully and were returned to our team screen. Let's repeat the process for our UI/UX designer. Again, I'll go ahead and remove the organizational units filter for our test company so that we can see some results. For this one, we'll use John Michael. Again, selecting the weeks opens up our create resource booking pane, and we'll go ahead and book and exit. All right, back on our team screen, we'll go ahead and refresh this page. And you'll now see that our required hours have been zeroed out and our generic resources no longer appear. If we were to switch back to our tasks screen, you would notice everywhere that we had assigned a UI/UX designer or a senior developer have now been replaced with the bookable resources or the named individuals that we selected. If we switch to our resource assignment screen, we'll be able to see by resource and by tasks how our time lays out over time. So if we can scroll forward and backwards, and we can also dynamically change our time scale between days all the way up to years. Finally, if you take a look at the top of the screen, at a glance, we're quickly able to determine our estimated labor cost for the project. Well, I feel like we've made some great progress with this project, from building our work breakdown structure or our project plan that John Michael helped us with, all the way through assigning generic resource placeholders to our tasks, to finally matching up named individuals to deliver those tasks when the time is right. With that, I'll hand things back over to John Michael.
It looks like we're about out of time for today, so I'd like to wrap things up. We want to thank each of you for spending this time with us. We hope you've learned a bit more about how Dynamics 365 Project Operations can provide a one-stop shop for your organization's activities. Be sure to join us in 2 weeks for our next webinar in this series, where we'll live a day in the life of a team member within the Project Operations ecosystem. If you have specific questions or are ready to get started with your very own implementation of Project Operations, reach out and we'll be glad to help.